Welcome, Timo. Welcome, Rebecca. Good to see you, Ed. Pleasure.
Super. I'm on. Thank you.
You got it. Welcome. I'm gonna step back and let you lead the show here. Thank you so much for joining us and talking to us about the road to COP. Looking forward to hearing what you have to say. Enjoy.
Thank you. Thank you so much. And thank you, everyone, for coming here. I see some familiar faces or familiar avatars. Ed, hi. How are you? I see Sharon, Pranav, Rebecca, um, Howard. Oh, wow. Nice to see everyone here. I hope everyone's having a great day, a great evening. Oh, I see Austin, too. Fantastic. Super. Well, lots of people coming in, so maybe I'll leave a few more minutes for everyone to keep streaming in. I know it's a hot topic. Got a lot of complaints from a lot of Kenyans about COP. So I'm waiting for a few people to keep streaming in because I really want to hear what people have to say about this. And yeah, just for everyone who's here, um, I want everyone to know that we want to have an open conversation about our road to COP and how we really want to amplify the voices of the communities we serve and of the land stewards. Oh, hi, Ned. And so, yeah, we're going to take this opportunity. Sorry, my neighbor's motorcycle just turned on. It's really loud. Yeah, so we want to take this opportunity to amplify the voices of the people who are struggling to get their voices heard at COP. COP27 is a very important policy driven and policy making space, and yet the people who they're meant to serve rarely even get an opportunity to have their voices heard. And this is just Regen Foundation and Regen Network's attempt to amplify voices of people who would otherwise, because of visas or financial reasons, or even just not even being able to have a space, because I've heard that's a very big issue now as well. A lot of people have been complaining to me that they are actually applying for spaces, like mission-led organizations, climate activists, climate action groups are just not being given a space to speak or even attend. And actually, more concerning is what's actually happening in Egypt, because I'm hearing now that the Egyptians themselves were going to need passes to even be in their own city of Sharm el Sheikh, or to move around. There's going to be some kind of cessation of movement. So it'd be interesting to hear. I'm hoping we can get maybe some Egyptians on board to tell us about the situation on the ground. I personally haven't had access to anyone, but if you do know anyone, please do send them this invite. I'd love to get to hear what's actually happening on the ground, and see what what we can do, if anything, just share sentiments, or even amplify that, because a lot of people don't really know what's going on the ground. So yeah, I guess the format of this conversation is going to be, um, what would you say to policymakers if given the chance? If you had a slot, if you were given even just a 5-minute opportunity to get these policymakers in a room, what would you say to them? As a regenerator, as an activist, what would you say to them? And maybe I'll just get the conversation going, and instead just tell you what I would say. Um, because I'm from Kenya, by the way. Right now, I'm in the Kenyan coast. It's beautiful. It's a beautiful evening. And one of the things I'm most proud of as a Kenyan is the fact that a lot of our electricity comes from regenerative or renewable sources. So we have hydropower, we've got geothermal power, We've got a lot of wind power coming in, and we've got like lots of wind tunnels and stuff. It's always sunny in Africa. And a lot of our power issues, though, because our power is expensive, and a lot of our power issues are usually because the distribution is not being dealt with. So I would say to policymakers, if I had a few, even 10 African big nations in the room, I would say, guys, like, we are underdeveloped, yes. And the only way we can move away from relying on industrialization from the West to produce all our stuff, because ours is too expensive, because our electricity is too expensive, is by making it cheaper. Because guess what? Our electricity is actually clean. It's cleaner than the electricity that's done in a lot of other places. So I mean, open it up to foreign direct investment. Open it up to private institutions that want to create mini grids that could have municipalized, localized energy that doesn't have to have thousands of kilometers of power grids. I mean, of power distribution pylons being created, but localized. So you could have solar farms and wind farms that could deal with the needs of their people and have this clean energy be the driver of this new form of industrialization that could be led by the community needs, rather than having this idea. Well, right now Ethiopia wants to export energy to Kenya because as much as we have all this energy, apparently we don't have the networks. So that's what I would personally say. And I'm curious to hear what you all have to say. I really don't want to dominate the conversation. So if anyone out there wants to speak, please, you can request to speak, and then I can make you a speaker, and you can tell us what you would want to say to these policymakers at COP if you had an opportunity. Oh, hi, Kwasi. I see you. So, Dave, maybe I might need your help. I don't know if I can make a person a speaker.
Yeah, if you just tap on their tap on their avatar or PFP, and you should be able to invite to speak. It
Oh,
looks like Kwasi is
there.
joining up, and just make sure you're on your mobile phone is really the only requirement, which can be a little annoying, but it is the nature of Twitter.
Yeah, perfect. Well, I see Kwasi, you want to speak. So here, I'm going to give you an invite. Um, Austin wrote an amazing piece on the road to COP, and a very interesting um, article. And I'm curious if you want to maybe share with us a little bit about the article, and tell us what your thoughts are on this.
I extend an invite to Austin as well.
Oh, there we go. We got Howard. Hi, Howard.
Hey, I'm online too. Can you
I'll give
hear
him a
me?
second.
Yeah, Austin, I can hear you.
Awesome. Yeah, I'll just while people are getting queued up, I can give a little bit of context to the kind of recent sort of reflections on COP. And happy to kind of have this be a way of serving up the larger conversation. You can follow me or look at the Regen Foundation account to have a look at the piece itself. It's published on Mir, and it has the title of it is Community Stake in the New Regenerative Economy. And what the foundation, in a lot of our conversations, the Regen Foundation has formulated is what are the major limitations and shortcomings around the notion of Article 6 that was formalized at the last COP, and what it can and can't do. And so Article 6 is effectively terms around different nations and different entities trading emissions in order to meet climate targets. and in the process creating a carbon market for better or for worse. And our larger, the too long didn't read of all of Article 6 that the foundation is arguing should be centered at COP27 is the fact that less than 3% of all of the credits produced in the climate finance industry can verifiably be proven to actually be regenerative, which is a staggeringly small number. And that the vast majority of what we understand to be happening in Article 6 around climate finance, regenerative economics, and carbon credits is measures of avoidance, claims that because a renewable energy was made, that harm was avoided, and that it becomes very quickly either a kind of neo-extractionary or neo-colonial game, but really a kind of accounting game around not actually regenerating the planet, but moving the numbers to make it look like you did and making millions in the process. So the thrust of the article is that climate finance has to actually be regenerative at its base and not just 3% of what is otherwise a multi-billion-dollar industry. And to do that, climate finance, carbon credits, or the more holistic version of eco credits that the Regen Network is developing, and the larger, we're not the only ones, is to say that in order for this to have lasting impact, regenerative economies at the bioregional scale that support viable income for the communities, grassroots organizations, and families that are actually stewarding and healing the biosphere, if there isn't viable resource flow moving to those economies, to those local conditions, then this is superficial and surface level. And that what we have to challenge at COP is to redefine the terms of eco credits and carbon markets so that resources actually flow to the bioregional economies where regeneration is happening, so that it's long-term sustained growth. And that is fundamentally radical and a new kind of redistribution of resources. So if you want to hear a more verbose version of that, check out the article. There's a lot more to unpack there, but I'll just pause because I don't want to take up too much of the space. But yeah, the regenerative revolution is community owned and governed. TLDR. I'll stop. Thanks.
Thank you, Austin. And yes, the future is community owned. It's the only way we're really going to move at the speed and at the pace that we sustainably need to. Howard, you've got the floor.
Well, thank you. And I want to commend Austin for his analysis and articulation of that direction. I have a parallel path that I would recommend, and it's to create a global carbon currency that would eventually supplant the US dollar as the exchange medium. And we have to, as in the past, gold had motivated human behaviors to an extraordinary degree. And I would like us to see that kind of incentive structure and that kind of very clear and simple valuation to say that we are trading your efforts, your wealth is measured by how much you're contributing to climate solutions. And obviously there is a whole lot of complexity, and I'm not suggesting the U.S. currency would give up its position as the exchange currency quickly or easily, but a parallel structure perhaps could be built with the carbon markets getting the kind of recognition that that the current financial structure commands by controlling wealth and resource allocation. And I think carbon should be not just a credit, but a whole asset class that people vie to produce and grow their wealth in. So I see that as a way of rethinking our economic relationships and our values, so that in the area where I live in the Pacific Northwest of the U.S., was very much shaped, as certainly from California to Alaska, by a gold rush. Well, we need a carbon rush, and we need people to behave as if this is the most valuable thing they can acquire, and to do it in a way that is regenerative. I think for simplicity, carbon has to be the medium of exchange, but certainly the markets could be designed as eco credits are conceived to have the whole range of values that would be considered wealth going forward. And it's kind of intuitive in a way that the more carbon in the land over which you're a steward, the more value, the more soil health, the more fertility. So that's that'd be my pitch if I had an audience at COP27.
Thank you so much, Howard. Howard, how about you tell us a little bit about what you're doing? Give us a short introduction about what you're up to.
Well, thank you. I'm up to something nowhere near as ambitious as I just articulated, but I'm a co-founder and currently the president of what's called the Kolshan Carbon Trust. And Kolshan is named after what the settlers called Mount Baker, which is the highest, not the highest peak. It's one of the volcanoes in the Cascade Range, and it is really quite an extraordinary place. We took that name with some trepidation about appropriation from the Coast Salish people. It's originally called Kona Kolshan, and we named our carbon trust Kolshan with the hope that we could demonstrate in this really beautiful Salish Sea region a model for collaborative natural climate solutions. We're currently, with the help of Regen Network, Regen Foundation, we're commencing a biochar pilot project this month, and we will be producing some carbon for markets through that effort as a pilot project. And then we hope to be able to establish proof of concept and then build a network of carbon trusts in different communities around initially the U.S. And then to see if this collaborative model is one that will take root. And our goal is to establish methods and to model behaviors in a way that others can adapt and adopt and adapt the carbon trust model for protecting carbon in soil and plants as a natural climate solution.
Thank you, Howard. Amazing. Quasi, hi. How about you take the stage?
Hi guys, thank you, Shai, for hosting this space. And I know what we'll discuss over here definitely will find their way to Egypt one or another by the start of the COP27 next week. So mine is just I'll just be brief. I come from a lake basin from the area of Lake Victoria, and in that part of the country here in Kenya, during the rainy season, there's a lot of water, which brings about not so many fish, but the water levels makes the place not really habitable for the locals because they can't, let's say, use the lake to maneuver from one place to another. And if they can't maneuver, definitely they can't go fishing, which is a problem since fishing is the source of livelihood, both for as a means to survive. Both economically and physically, they need fish to eat. And also now during when the sun is during the dry times, the water levels are very low that the fish decide to migrate and go to, let's say, areas like Uganda or some other part of the the lake that the water levels are high. So you find that's a real that's a big problem for the locals. So this was brought about definitely due to deforestation of the island. Actually, there are so many islands in the lake: Mfangano, Rusinga, Migingo, the famous one, which actually all the trees were cut down and people now live over there. You can't even find one tree over there. So definitely, this brought about all this problem that we're facing on this side of town. So my question to the leaders and the policymakers there will be, how can they embrace technology to as a way of mitigating climate change? Currently the world is moving towards IoT, AI, and blockchain. And you know what they say, IoT is the IoT fields, AI things, and blockchain remembers. So I think my challenge to the leaders will be to embrace technology as one of the ways of fastening the process of mitigating climate change. And I'll just probably just pick up from one where some of the speakers what some of the speakers talked about carbon credits. One of the ways of fastening the actually liquidity, of hastening liquidity from the west from the west to Africa and all other parts of the world is currently through crypto, which definitely is facing a lot of backlash. Not really backlash, but it's yet to be embraced by the majority in the world. Not everyone is, especially the US. Although currently I'm seeing they're starting to become pro crypto, especially when the midterms are approaching. I see they're probably talking. They're saying that they want to be pro crypto, but these politicians, they can just be talking just to get the votes, but after they get the votes, they fail to implement what they say. So my challenge, I think, will be to encourage to embrace technology as one of the ways of fastening the process of mitigating climate change. Yeah, I'll leave it there for now.
Hey, Shayla, you're muted. I'm not sure if you're on there, but
Uh,
thank you for sharing, Quasi. That was super helpful. I see some other friends out in the audience. Hi, Ray. It's good to see you. Invite you up in case you'd like to join. Welcome, Gregory and team. Any
I'm
other
also going to
thoughts?
prompt Ana
Yeah,
Maria,
please go
if
ahead.
from your perspective with the work you're doing in Colombia, we had an awesome time talking over the last month when a lot of different regenerative economics people were down in South America. So if you're inclined, I definitely invite you to step up and be a speaker.
Hey guys, sorry, I'm literally like on the road right now, so I don't have like good service. And like I was like really like trying to make sense of like what would the solution be, and I mean I don't really know. Like I think like after all these like events and now that like COP27 it's coming. Um, yeah, like for me it's a matter of like maybe like just like working on ground and doing like as much as we can individually. I mean like by region or by country, because maybe like the help that we are asking from them, like it's not gonna come as fast as we need. So for me it's been more like, okay, let's maybe, I mean, not ignore them, but like let's like use what we have, um, are out this possibility, and um, start like growing from there, and eventually like get the help that we need from their like entities. But like for now, let's like we have. So yeah, like that's like pretty like um, yeah, like the sense that I have right now. Like let's like do it like each in our like region, and see how we can like collaborate with between like small participants.
It definitely brings to mind like how much does a centralized meeting confluence like COP matter to the decentralized and distributed process that's underway here, and like not waiting for blockers, but allowing local initiatives, bioregional scale initiatives to get off the ground, to network with one another, to find resonance and ways to amplify and be altruistic together. Like you don't have to ask for permission for that. And so it's a parallel work of putting pressure on the big centralized regulatory agreements, like the type of things that happen in COP, and then this renaissance that we're experiencing of all these different individual projects that are developing something at the local level. I really appreciate your words, Ana Maria.
Welcome, Raves, to the stage. Any thoughts on the road to COP? What's moving for you? And I'm obviously following along Twitter in particular, and with a variety of people who are setting up obviously side events. Certainly, just concerns around greenwashing. Are we getting anywhere? Are these important events to be at? It's hate to be there, hate not to be there kind of feelings I get from folks.
That's very well articulated, David. And hello, Gregory. Hello, Charlotte, and everyone. Good to see so many people here. Yeah, I think COP is one of those things where it's like local elections. You have to have them, and sometimes you just hate them because the government is not going to do anything. So that's similar to the feeling here, in that, especially this COP, uh, I think the general feeling, which everybody knows but is afraid to say it aloud, some people are not, but most of them are, is that probably nothing will get done. It was beyond time when all the governments needed to make a conscious effort, and the question is really, really, really boils down to finances, right? How much finance are the governments willing to put in, and in what way will they hold themselves accountable for it, on adaptation, on mitigation, on loss and damage? And how does carbon market play a role here? Where does equity and justice come in? These are the broad questions. And if we reach any sort of agreement or treaty and everybody agrees to it and goes home happy, I'd be very, very surprised. To me, it's just a glaring example of how it's really hard to have like a few hundred people meet and know everything about what is going on in the planet. I think that's a heavy burden on them, and we just have to be aware of the limitations. I think the community sector and the private sector has a huge, huge role to play here. And I am curious if, in the context of all of these and on a grassroots level, particularly as Web3 as an industry, can we start, parallel conversations and have Web3 be the voice of the community to also, generate bottom up kind of financing facilities, self-governed entities, and so on, that can make progress faster. And I'm going to hand it back to Shella here, and you, David, and anyone else who wants to be up. I see there are a lot of people here, so it would be lovely to know those who are going there, and especially those who wish you could be there, and how can we amplify all of your voices.
Shout out to Lillian in the audience. Lillian, I know that you might have some thoughts and reflections on all the different initiatives that you're working on, so invite you to speak if you like.
I'm happy to chime in a little bit while we're waiting for other folks to share. It's interesting. I'm first off, good morning, everyone. Afternoon, evening, good day. I'm actually still on the fence about going to COP, and currently leaning to not going. It's interesting, just at a very personal level. This is the first year that I've wanted to go. Generally speaking, my inclination has been like, oh, okay. I mean, this is sort of, there's going to be a lot of talking, and mostly my focus is mostly on unlocking grassroots potential. And yes, on some level, these institutional processes are super important. And I actually believe, like institutions are important in conversation about climate change and other things. There's no doubt about that. And those institutions need to be regenerated, reinvented, evolved, and be much more place-based, be much more bioregional, be much more attuned to local conditions. And if these big institutional structures don't have kind of reference designs that we, the people who are actively regenerating places, are creating ourselves, it seems diminishingly unlikely that the institutional processes themselves are going to come up with these sorts of ideas. That said, I think there are lots of placeholders in COP and in these sort of like larger treaties. There's a desire and acknowledgement for these institutions to, I believe, to be serving local communities. And I think there is a lot of commitment amongst those stakeholders that aligns pretty deeply. My assessment has always been, yeah, but it's probably most valuable for me to just keep trucking along and building and connecting. This year I had kind of a different take, which was mostly, I kind of want to go and learn. I kind of want to go and see the processes for myself. It's so easy to sit back and either judge or assume. But actually getting a firsthand experience is really different, and could be pretty exciting. Now, that said, I sort of feel like I've expended my travel budget, both sort of like mentally and just time away from family, time away from just like getting work done. And that's why I'm on the fence personally. I just have this personal like, wow, am I really going to fly somewhere else? I have my ways of justifying the climate impact of flights based on the perceived importance of doing specific work that really can't get done without being in person. So setting that aside and just sort of assuming like, yeah, it's probably net an important thing at this point, or could be justified. I'm just really in this personal inquiry around my own, ability to be effective there and the other responsibilities I have. So I don't know. That's that's my take on COP at the moment.
The whole listening approach rather than talking is that's an exciting thought. I hadn't even thought about that. JK.
Go ahead, Jimmy. Thank you for joining us up on stage. What's moving in your mind on COP and refi and kind of like, yeah, this the state of things. This is a seminal event and moment, and it feels like it's not a celebratory time, but it is a moment. What does it mean for you?
Yeah, most definitely. I think that some really special things happen when enough people put their minds together to solve big problems. And I think I'm really curious to see what some of the solutions are, the action plans that come out of it, and really what happens at COP. I have a question for Gregory, actually, or maybe anyone else who wants to chime in on this. I'm doing mangrove tree planting, so I find the concept of eco credits really, really interesting. Rewarding the process, not just the outcome. And I'm curious to know, like, where do you see this eco credits concept going? What kind of claims do you think can companies make when they acquire eco credits? And how do you see that eco credit market evolving?
Yeah, cool question. I can speak to that, briefly. I mean, at a high level, I think, there's sort of eco debt and eco credit, right? Just to make it simply, our whole civilization runs on eco debt, whether we're liquidating living capital to turn it like by mining rare earth minerals or by pumping carbon dioxide into the atmosphere. um, there's you can sort of conceptualize the ecological debt that we're accruing, and I think at a top level, eco credits are regenerating that, or sort of like paying our debt off as humans by trying to get back into balance, and ideally maybe even sort of like a net positive, like paying it forward to ecosystems to repair and regenerate those ecosystems. So just like that's my high level framing of what's going on. Of course, the most common classes of eco credits that are talked about these days are carbon credits, right? Because there's so much, like we're talking about COP right now, and there's so much attention and awareness that's growing around atmospheric carbon imbalances caused by fossil fuels being used to drive our global economy. So that's a giant ecological debt. It's pretty clear. There's emerging scientific consensus about that, and people are like actively working to internalize that. And there's an existing concept of carbon credits. I think there's also emerging understanding of other impacts that the human economy, that businesses have, whether that's biodiversity, water impacts, and sort of this, I think, urge to start taking more active stewardship. So I think there's a lot of room for cool dynamic eco credits to be kind of units of account for balancing that, and in a way moving beyond just this balancing act. I want to be clear that that is one paradigm to think about this, but it's not the one that I kind of use most often. Most often I'm thinking about just like, how do we symbolize regeneration as a civilization and align around that's what we really want. And so I think there's a lot of other cool, maybe just more deeply intrinsic ways of linking eco credits into other cool forms of value. And that's a whole, I think, sort of the Wild West of refi. Just to continue grounding this one layer deeper before I pause and pass it back to the group. I think and maybe reweave it into the COP context. I really firmly believe that if we're only paying attention to carbon, we're losing the script pretty significantly. And that's why we've used the term eco credits instead of just carbon credits all along. The healthy living systems storing or sequestering carbon into a biodiverse matrix of life does so much more than just balance the atmosphere. It is really, like it's our biosphere requires this cycle of life begetting life. And to the degree to which we're just getting carbon tunnel vision, I think it's really actually ultimately, it not only misses the point, it may actually end up being destructive. And so I'm really excited, actually, looking beyond COP for carbon, whatever it is it COP27 right now? I think looking beyond COP27, I'm actually in a lot of ways more excited and not on the fence at all about COP15, which is the biodiversity COP, and starting to lean into the institutional awareness of the importance of biodiversity. Because if we repair watersheds, right, if we repair the healthy living systems and the biodiverse matrix of life, we get carbon as a bonus, basically, from my perspective. So that's I'm super excited about all the classes of eco credits that are emerging in the Regen Network ecosystem around biodiversity, whether they're using keystone species as a proxy or acoustic monitoring, or there's a lot there. It's a pretty emergent, and there's a lot of room for innovation there in terms of conceptualizing what a biodiversity eco credit is. But cool. I'm gonna pause there and pass it back over. It looks like Ed's got his hand up, so go for it, Ed.
Yes, thanks for inviting me up. I've been attending a lot of online meetings over the last bunch of years, and one thing I find in common is that they'll constantly talk about how they're being inclusive in who they're inviting up to a lot of these events or on the panels or to speak. And then I bring up the point that how come in the regenerative agriculture community, those that we consider the leading farmers around the world or the leading researchers or scientists that work directly with farmers, how come they never are invited to these meetings if you're so inclusive? And often I get the reply back, oh, gee, well, next time. Well, next times have been happening for many years now, and they're still not ever brought to the table. In fact, it was kind of depressing a couple weeks ago when it was announced that Coca-Cola was going to be one of the major sponsors of COP27. And yet they're one of the biggest polluters, and, it's not what I would consider a real regenerative food products that they offer either. So, I sort of agree with Gregory, certainly on the eco credits, and, whether or not you can really get enough accomplished in attending. Now, what I found is when you do attend these things and you're able to speak, though if you're not on stage, it's limited. Trying to find people out in the crowds are difficult that are really interested in what we're doing, and so it gets tough. But there are certainly going to be people there that are thinking differently, even if they're working for an NGO or a corporation that isn't maybe doing the right thing. You will get people do get contacted later and say, hey, would you like to really talk about this? Because I'm really interested in other approaches. But I'm not sure that, it really, when you consider, as Gregory said, the flight, the everything, and, whether being there is promoting what its, drive is, which is really not doing what I think we need to accomplish. So it's a tough situation. And the U.S. delegation now, I guess, has been pretty much taken over with AIM-4C, the Agricultural Innovation Mission for Climate, which was an initiative started basically by Bill Gates, and it was launched at last year's COP. And this year, I think it's going to be USDA's sort of lead representation. So that's not very encouraging either. So I'll leave it at that. Thank you.
And thank you for chiming in. You're right. Sorry, I lost some power there, so I went off. But it's interesting to hear what you just said. Farmers never have a seat at the table, and I mean, if climate change is going to affect anyone, it's you guys. So I see a lot of people here who still want to speak, and we got such limited time. So how about we get the pollinators in the room? Jimmy, James, one of you. What do you want to tell us? What do you want to tell policymakers if you had the opportunity to?
I'm actually more excited about you guys than policymakers. I have more faith in the general population and your guys' efforts than I do in our leaders who are being sponsored by Coca-Cola and still subsidizing fossil fuels. I don't imagine you guys are going to be printing money to give to big oil, which means I'm more pro this than what they're going to end up doing in the end.
Thank you. We've got faith in you too. Jimmy, come on, tell us, what do you want to tell policymakers?
I like James's take. But, well, I'd say, embrace technology. Keep an open mind about how it can be leveraged to make a positive impact, to scale some of the amazing existing impactful solutions. We've seen both Vera and Gold Standard do some pretty extensive kind of reviews into it. It's kind of still not totally clear how open their minds are to tokenization, things of that nature. But I think if the policymakers kind of step in and embrace technology and try to support this innovative ecosystem that is trying to solve climate change in a scalable way, then I think that then that'll kind of trickle down, and we'll see a lot more support for this regen movement, and ultimately that'll be the solution. One of the great solutions that will ultimately put a dent in the climate crisis. So, yeah, pretty much that.
Thank you, Jimmy, and keep planting those mangroves. Jimmy's in Watamu and Kilifi, and we're going to meet up tomorrow. So thanks, Jimmy. I'm curious to hear from Liliane. Liliane's one of our land stewards and part of our Regen Network. And I'm really curious, Liliane, if you have something to say. I know you'd be joining virtually, but if you had the stage in front of all of these policymakers, what was the message that you'd want to send out to them?
Oh my goodness, I would love to have the stage in front of all those people, to be honest. I think that one of the things would be that, apart that it's a complex topic, I would like to see a lot of effort being focused on empowering communities. And not only empowering from the aspect of technology, but also with regards to human and social capacities. How do we empower individuals and within the communities to have sovereignty in what it is they need, and what it is they need from us on the outside, because I would like to be able to have a combination of expertise, both from the wisdom keepers and from those who need to learn, and at the same time have something to offer. So I would like to see how much more of that cross-pollination or intergenerational or intercultural learning and exchange can we do now. It's not about solutions, we have them already, but the human element is something that keeps being left out. And I think that's also why we keep going to all those COPs year after year without any tangible results, even though I think we are getting a good indicator of how much more work needs to be done. So thank you.
I see Kennedy in the crowd. Kennedy is building on Regen Network from Shamba Network. Kennedy, why don't you request to speak and tell us about some of the amazing work you're doing in Kenya, and tell us, as a Kenyan who is in Africa and is required to get a visa, which is a very arduous process. I'll tell you that. I've been going through it. Please, I just need to understand, like, how they expect us to have our African voices there if the process itself is just so exclusive. It's so difficult even to get a stand. So I don't know if we can give Kennedy the mic to speak, but I can tell you, representation at this conference is is not as broad as it may seem. And with Africa being as big as it is, also financially, a lot of climate activists won't be able to make it. A lot of NGOs that are actually doing amazing work will not be able to make it. And from what I've heard, actually, from Nena, whose partner is in Egypt, is that even the local Egyptian NGOs themselves won't. So I like what you said, Gregory, and I like what you said, James, that, maybe, yes, as much as we need to, talk about COP, maybe we shouldn't just rely on them as well. Yes, the policies will be made, but the action must continue from us, from a grassroots level, from the private sector, because that's what's going to lead this innovation. And bringing back to what I said before, industrialization, clean industrialization, this is all market led, and this is all privately led by industries like us. So don't lose the faith. And I don't know if anyone else wants to go. We haven't heard from you, Ned. Maybe you want to say something.
Yeah, the only thing I would add is this is kind of actually going off what a bunch of you, Howard and Gregory and Ed and others have said. There is this organization, or I guess it's more of an initiative right now called Beyond Bretton Woods. And if folks know what Bretton Woods is, it was a conference that was held back in 1944 after World War II. And it was attended by 44 different countries. And they basically set up the current international monetary system. They created the World Bank, the International Monetary Fund, and there's an initiative called Beyond Bretton Woods now. And they've got actually heads of state involved. So this is really getting some momentum, and they're talking about, some sort of climate currency. And I would put, kind of with Gregory, where I would probably push for something more like an ecosystem backed currency or something like that. But it's, they're thinking about this stuff, and they're looking at things in a very holistic view. They're looking at, climate change, they're looking at the biodiversity crisis, they're looking at the social crisis all around the world. And from what I gather, their mindset is that, the initial Bretton Woods conference was held to repair the world after World War II, because it was kind of a shambles. But now we've got this is another emergency that we have to take care of. And it's not a single thing. It's not just like we had a war, let's fix it up. It's got, he calls it an 8-headed beast or something like that. The guy that's kind of spearheading this, that's the heads are the climate change so they're to address all these issues, because it is something that's critical. We need to have the international at the table to do this. These grassroots efforts are important, and it's, we got to keep these things going. But unless we can get some, kind of the international community involved in this stuff and get countries backing it at a big time, it's going to be a lot harder for us to do what we want to do. So anyway, I just wanted to bring up this idea of Beyond Bretton Woods. They will be at COP27, and they were at their first presentation at COP26. And it would be nice to have a seat at the table, get a voice at that table. And this is kind of a goofy idea I had the other day, is it would be kind of neat to have, the initial Bretton Woods, it would be neat to have the countries that were not at the first Bretton Woods to make the decisions and see how different things would be. Anyway, I'll just leave it at that.
That's amazing. We're gonna look for those people, Revs. When we go, we got to look for those guys and them listen to us.
I want to chime in on the back of that very briefly, just to say that our colleagues at Open Earth Foundation, along with some contribution from me, just published a white paper on nature-backed currencies and eco credits being designed in collaboration between Regen and Open Earth are part of the foundational building blocks for the approach of these new nature-based currencies. And there are sort of smaller pilots being discussed in Costa Rica and Ecuador and other places. And actually, there is a panel that is taking place that Open Earth Foundation with the UN Innovation Hub is hosting around these nature-based currencies. I was invited to speak on it. I don't think I'm going, right? But there's a conversation, and we're in it. This community is in it. I'm sort of the proxy there. But I think, you know, I will definitely, Rave, I'll definitely connect you and anyone else, but you should be jamming with Martine while you're there. And there are these little windows into these mega institutions in which people are hungry for these stories and ideas and ways of engaging that we're pioneering together. So a little light at the end of the tunnel there to end out the conversation.
There's a lot of light. Honestly, I'm feeling so hopeful from everyone after this conversation. I think there's a lot of action coming from a lot of people, and we can't lose hope because we are our only hope. Thank you so much for everyone who spoke. For those of you who still have something to say, please go and to our Twitter, and you can at me, you can at Regen Network and Regen Foundation. Please chime in. We will take your voices as much as we can to the people who matter. I think we should even write a report after as to what we saw and what happened and what we can achieve. We'll go farther together if we all work towards this. And I'm really happy. I'm really grateful. Thank you so much, everyone, and have a good evening.
Thank you, everybody.
Thanks,
We'll see you next
everyone.
week. Take care. Bye-bye.
Bye.